Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully you've watched the actual texture video and the one that's actually explained all the bits and pieces, because this is the one with an answer example in it. And there's our lovely little echidna who's nice and prickly. Sorry, it's supposed to be a hedgehog. Okay, texture. So the things you need to look for or listen for is describe the actual texture. You need to make sure you identify the instruments in each section. You need to tell me what sort of, or tell the examiner what sort of phony it is. And you need to be able to draw some sort of diagram. So those of you who like the old mind map, here we go. Just to reinforce it, we need to describe the texture, we need to identify the instruments, we need to say what sort of phony it is, and we need to say do an actual diagram. Now don't forget, when you're answering these sorts of questions, and you can use this method for anything, you need to use the UR-TOPS method. So that means U for underline, R for read everything on the page, make sure it's all done, you've got the right question and the right bits and pieces, create a topic sentence for each section, organise your ideas, plan the ideas and your answers, and support by explaining all of your terms as you go through. Okay, so a question might be, discuss the use of texture in this excerpt. Now, the thing is with texture, like as in structure and dynamics and expressive techniques, you usually don't get just a straight texture question. You normally get it texture and structure together, or texture and dynamics and expressive techniques, or it's usually within something else. It's not usually on its own. And if it is on its own, you can bet your bottom dollar that it has some sort of change from homophonic to polyphonic. So the music we've got here today is for you to listen to is called Parker Bell's Canon. Now the name canon should be sort of ringing some bells in your little brain, because a canon is a melodic line that's sung in rounds. Okay, if you think of Frere Jacques, that's the round where someone starts with Frere Jacques, and they can continue, and the second group starts when they're at the end of that Frere Jacques. There are lots of little rhymes and canons and things that you would have listened to and used when you were a child. Anyway, but Parker Bell Canon's a beautiful piece of music. I actually had it for my to walk down the aisle when I got married a number of years ago. We won't go there. And as said, but my friend played it on the organ for me. It was lovely. But here is the original piece, and here we go. If I can get it to play. There we go. We'll pause it there. Look, it's a beautiful piece of music that goes on. As I said, it's just a lovely, lovely piece of music. Okay, here we go. So, in your first listening, you should have written down your prompts. Dip D. Describe, identify, what phony is it, and diagram. List all the instruments that you hear as they enter in the actual song. or piece of music. Reread the question in the first listening. Write a topic sentence for describe. And organise your thoughts. Write your answer in dot points. And don't forget to support your answer by explaining every term as you go. As I keep saying, and I can't say it enough, you need to make sure that you've said everything, all the terms, all the time, so that and explained all of them so that you get your high marks. It's the only way to get those Band 6 results. Okay, so for describe, you need to listen and describe, is the texture actually thick or thin? Or does it only sound thick with only a few instruments playing? And is there any use of tutti, especially if there's an orchestra or a big band playing? So for this particular song, when you're describing the texture, your topic sentence would be something like this. The texture in this music changes as the music progresses. It is as follows. So it starts very thin with only harpsichord and double bass, then gradually gets thicker as more instruments string instruments are introduced to create a much thicker texture later in the excerpt. That's as much as you need to do for describe. Then you need to be able to identify. So identify each instrument played in each section. Briefly describe their role, the melody, chordal, rhythmic, bass line, etc., as much as you can. And is there any use of doubling or imitation, and state when, where, and by who. Okay. This is where it starts to get a bit complicated because there was a lot of this sort of stuff happening in this piece. Okay, so identify. We have the topic sentence is, there are 3 main sections in this excerpt and the instruments in each are listed below. So in section A, it starts with the harpsichord and double bass, then the violins enter, followed by the second violins, then cello and viola enter together after that. Now, in most orchestras, they will have 2 groups of violins. First violins will play the main part and the main melody, and second violins will be a support. Okay, so there's a reason why there's 2 groups of violins there. And in section B and C has all the instruments performing at the same time a canon or round. Now that canon actually changes and the melody actually changes, and that's what section B and C is. So section B starts a bit slower, section C is a bit faster, a lot quicker notes, and you could say that in your answer. Okay, the most important thing for texture is the phony. All right, most of you probably don't know what that other phony is in the corner there, by the way. So what type of phony is being used? Remember, phony is a word that I've used to help you remember it. So is it monophonic, which is one melodic line? Is it homophonic with one melody and chordal accompaniment? Remembering the chordal accompaniment does not have to come from a guitar or any instrument that can play a chord. It's any instruments that are not playing the melody. Or is it polyphonic, which is 2 or more melodies performed at the same time? Now, a lot of Baroque music, we're talking Bach and all those sorts of people, use a lot of polyphonic things. So it's good to know your composers, at least a bit of an idea and a bit of history behind them, so you've got some sort of idea when you see their name in a question. And the last bit is try and describe any harmony as either similar motion, which means or parallel motion, same thing, which they're moving in contour together, or contrary motion where they start at opposite ends, so one high, one low, and they move together and then apart again. State when, where, and by who. So, and the last thing, is there any changes of phony between sections? State when, where, and again by who. So here we go. In this answer, we have the texture, our topic sentence being the texture in this music changes from homophonic to polyphonic as it progresses as described below. So, section A, harpsichord and double bass are doubling each other. They're performing the same part an octave apart. Now that's where I've explained things, so that's the support for the answer. The violins enter and perform in parallel motion, which is the same contour, a third or a fifth above or below, and other parts also what it should be, in parallel motion, as does the cello and violas in this section. This section is homophonic, which means it's melody with accompaniment. The melody changes to each new instrument as it enters. And it just seems that when an instrument comes in to start, that's the one instrument that seems to take over in that melody in section A. But that's that slow bit where they all seem to be moving together, at least rhythmically in unison. Then section B, All instruments start to separate, each taking a melodic line of their own, and this continues more definitely into section C, where the music is now a polyphonic canon, which means the same melody repeated by different instruments, but all played at the same time with different entry and exit points. And just as I gave you the example of Frere Jacques, like one instrument might start the actual melody, and then 2 bars later another instrument starts, and another 2 bars another instrument starts. So you've got 3 instruments playing the same melody but at different times, all at the same time. And as you could hear with that lovely example before, go back and have another listen. It really is a beautiful piece of music, and it just works so beautifully together. Last bit is diagram. Now, again, this is really important. Now, even if you can't draw a diagram for the whole thing that you're listening to, try and do something. So you need to use a diagram and label where each instrument comes in or out of each section. Now, because there's space on my page, I haven't done all sections, but the topic sentence is, the diagram below shows the entry points in section A for each instrument. So I've listed them in order as they come in. So we had harpsichord, double bass, first violins, second violins, cello and viola. And down the bottom you can see section A instrument and entry points. It's really important that you actually state that's section A, because if you had to just put what's down the side and listed the instruments and didn't actually label the bottom section, then the examiners wouldn't even look at the diagram, because they need to know that you know what section it is. So the harpsichord is played all the way throughout, and so is the double bass, because they both start the piece of music. The first violins come in next, and then the second violins come in next, and then after that the cello and the viola come in together. And as said, that's for section A, and it basically continues all the way through for section B and C. And that, I'm hoping, has helped you with writing an answer for texture.